Our first story comes from a man named Jake. He and his friends, Mark and Leo, decided to go on a weekend hiking trip in a large state park known for its dense, old-growth forests. They were experienced hikers, so they decided to take a less-traveled trail to avoid the crowds. They started early, and the hike was beautiful. But by mid-afternoon, the sky darkened with thick, gray clouds. A cold drizzle began to fall, and a thick fog started to creep between the trees, obscuring their path. They decided to turn back, but the fog had become so thick they could barely see 10 feet in front of them. That's when they realized they must have taken a wrong turn. The familiar trail markers were nowhere to be found. They were lost. As panic began to set in, Leo pointed through the mist. "Hey, is that a path?" It was a narrow, but clear, footpath heading down a slope. It wasn't on their map, but it was better than nothing. They figured it might be a game trail that would eventually lead to a road or a stream they could follow. The path twisted and turned, leading them deeper into a part of the forest that felt older. The trees were gnarled and twisted, and the air grew cold and still. The sound of their own footsteps seemed muffled. That's when they heard it. A low, rhythmic thumping sound coming from up ahead. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded almost like someone chopping wood. "Jake, hello? Is someone there?" The chopping stopped instantly. The silence that followed was heavier and more terrifying than the sound itself. They stood frozen, listening. Then, a new sound started. A slow, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled through dry leaves. And it was getting closer. They didn't wait. They turned and started running back the way they came, stumbling in the fog. The dragging sound behind them seemed to keep pace, never getting closer, but never falling behind either. It was hurting them. After what felt like an eternity of blind panic, they burst out onto a familiar fire road. A park ranger's truck was even driving by and stopped to help. Gasping for breath, they told the ranger about the path and the sound and the thing that chased them. The ranger's face went pale. He told them there are no paths in that section of the woods. It's a steep ravine, impossible to walk through. And that particular sound, the chopping. Old tales from the 1800s talk about a lone trapper who went mad out here. They say he still warns people away from the ravine where he fell to his death by chopping at the air with his phantom axe. Jake and his friends got out of there that night and never went back. But Jake says he still has nightmares about the sound of that axe stopping and knowing that something had just stopped its work and was now listening to him. Our second story is from a woman named Sarah. When she was a teenager, she used to visit her grandfather's remote cabin every summer. The cabin was surrounded by a dense pine forest. Her grandfather had one strict, non-negotiable rule: never, under any circumstances, go into the woods after dark. One night, when she was about 16, she was on the phone with her friend back home. The reception in the cabin was terrible, so she slipped outside onto the porch to get a better signal. It was a warm night, and the full moon was bright, casting long, skeletal shadows from the trees. As she was talking, she saw a flicker of movement at the tree line. She squinted into the darkness. Standing perfectly still between two large pine trees was a figure. It was tall and impossibly thin, its limbs looking almost like twisted branches. It was just standing there, facing the cabin. Her blood went cold. She couldn't make out any features, just a tall, black silhouette that seemed to absorb the moonlight around it. "Sarah, hi. I think I have to go." She slowly backed toward the door, her eyes locked on the figure. As her hand found the doorknob, the thing moved. It didn't walk. It jerked unnaturally to the side, disappearing behind the thick trunk of a pine tree. A moment later, she saw it again, peeking out from behind a different tree, maybe 20 feet closer. It was playing a game of peekaboo with her. She slammed the door shut, locked it, and ran to wake her grandfather. She was crying, trying to explain what she saw. He didn't seem surprised, just grim. He grabbed his old rifle and looked out the window. "Grandfather, it's still out there, watching. Don't look at it. It likes the attention." He made her sleep in his room that night with the rifle propped against the bed. She didn't sleep a wink. All night long, she heard a faint, dry scraping sound on the outside log walls of the cabin. It would move from one wall to another, slowly circling them. At first light, the sound stopped. Her grandfather went outside to look. There were no footprints in the soft dirt around the cabin, but on the outside of her bedroom window, etched faintly into the glass, were 3 long, vertical scratches. She never went back to the cabin after that summer. Years later, after her grandfather passed away, she was helping clean out the cabin and found an old journal of his. In it, he had written one line that made her blood run cold. Our final story comes from a man named David. He was an avid trail runner and loved nothing more than a long run through his local forest preserve just as the sun was beginning to set. One evening, he was on a run deeper into the preserve than usual. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and the twilight was fading fast. He decided to turn around and head back, switching on his headlamp to light the path, edge of his hearing. It came from the trees to his right. He stopped, thinking it was another runner or a hiker. "Hello," he called out. No answer, just the sound of the wind in the leaves. He started running again, picking up the pace. A few minutes later, he heard it again. This time, it was clearer. It was a voice, but it sounded wrong, like someone mimicking human speech without understanding the words. It was a jumble of syllables, but it sounded like it was saying his name. David, he froze. His heart hammered in his chest. He was alone out here. He knew he was. He shone his headlamp into the woods, but the beam was weak and only penetrated a few feet into the oppressive darkness. Then, another whisper answered from the left side of the path, and then another from behind him. It was like he was surrounded by faint, whispering voices, all just murmuring nonsense, all getting closer with each second. He started to run, full sprint now, not caring about the roots and rocks on the path. The whispers kept pace with him, moving through the trees alongside him without making a sound. They were getting louder, more excited, like a pack of animals closing in on prey. He could see the parking lot lights up ahead, a beacon of safety. He poured on every last bit of speed he had, bursting out of the tree line and stumbling onto the asphalt. He bent over, gasping for air, his whole body trembling. The whispers stopped the moment his feet hit the pavement. He looked back at the dark tree line. The forest was silent again. He was safe. He hurried to his car, fumbled with his keys, and jumped inside, locking the doors. As he sat there, trying to calm his shaking hands, he noticed something on the sleeve of his running jacket. Caught on the fabric was a small, twisted piece of gray bark. Entangled within it were several long strands of fine, white hair. The kind of hair that doesn't come from any animal he's ever seen. He never went running there at night again. But sometimes, when he's trying to fall asleep, he swears he can still hear those faint, excited whispers just outside his window, waiting for him to come back and play. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.